How to Market Your Mediation Practice, a conversation with Natalie Armstrong-Motin from howtomarketmymediationpractice.com. That is our topic for today.
Welcome to the Lawyers and Mediators International Show and Podcast by instantmediations.com, where we discuss law and conflict resolution topics to educate both professionals and everyday people. Catch regular episodes on YouTube, the Instant Mediations app, and anywhere you get your podcasts. Just remember, nothing in these episodes constitutes legal advice, so be sure to talk to a lawyer, as cases are fact-dependent.
Hi everyone, this is Mac Natalia, attorney, mediator, and arbitrator from Houston, Texas.
And Natalia Armstrong-Motin, advocate, mediator, and arbitrator from Warsaw, Poland, today from Houston, Texas.
Hi, everybody. I'm Sylvia Mayer. I'm an arbitrator, mediator, and attorney, also located in Houston, Texas.
And Sylvia, we have a special guest today that you had brought on to this episode and wanted you to introduce her.
Absolutely. I am so excited to introduce everybody to Natalie Armstrong-Motin. Natalie is an extraordinary resource for how to market your mediation practice. And she's going to share some of her tips with us today, but I also encourage everyone to join her every Monday. She does a free program called Marketing Mondays that gives you tips on how to market your practice. And I encourage you to join in on those as well.
Awesome. Natalie, could you speak a little bit about yourself and just kind of introduce yourself to everybody?
Absolutely. Thanks very much for having me on the program today. My name, like mentioned earlier, Natalie Armstrong-Motin with Marketing Resolution. And for more than a quarter of a century, I've been helping mediators and arbitrators around the world to design the practice they desire, then build it and promote it and maintain it. So it's been a really exciting career. We work with some fantastic people.
Natalie, I'm going to screen share to show your website. And for anybody who's listening and not watching, be sure to check out the channel. You can go to YouTube on the Lawyers and Mediators site and see the video, but you can also go to howtomarketmymediationpractice.com to check it out. And so can you tell us a little bit more about your brand, Natalie, before we move on to questions?
Sure. So for each client, what we provide can be a little bit different because everyone's an individual. Each practice is a bit different. So normally what we provide, though, are the basic services that start with foundational pieces like websites and databases, helping you determine what your brand is in addition to your brand ID, which is your colors and your logo. And then we move on to the actual activities of building a mediation practice or an arbitration practice. And those would consist of helping you to get your articles published or find a speaking gig. We might help you develop a YouTube channel like this or a podcast. We might help you with your social media marketing. There are lots of things we do for our clients, but that sort of sums up the big ones, I suppose.
Thanks. And now we're gonna go kind of round robin and get your take on some of these topics, because online mediation and just mediation marketing, general and ODR, is something that Natalia and I are very passionate about, and it's something that I know Sylvia has also talked to us about as well. So this is why we really wanted to kind of get your expertise. So for folks who might be listening, who just want some tips and basics, they can get it from this episode today. So ladies, the floor is yours.
So when it comes to marketing, Natalie, in very basic words, what a mediator should have in mind when they think, oh, I need to market myself. I need to do something so that people see me. What would be your primary advice?
Well, I think before you start with your activities, Natalia, you need to step back just a bit and think about the people that you want to have as clients and ask yourself, what are their preferences from me? What do they want to see? What are their psychographics? So not just the demographic of those individuals, but what is it that they really want from me? And from that, then you can develop appropriate activities. I can tell you what doesn't work. It rarely works that we advertise. For us, publicity is more important than advertising. And when I say publicity, I mean providing those kinds of activities that are educational, informative, have a benefit orientation. We don't want to be too aggressive in our communication. That's very off-putting in our industry. So we want to start with things that provide a benefit to the recipient, and those could be through writing, speaking, training, networking, or on social media.
Sylvia?
So, Natalie, if you're just starting out, somebody who's just out of the box said, you know what, I've done my training and I've done maybe a few that are pro bono free type mediations, but I want to build this into a business. What's the very first step they need to do?
It's always a fun exercise to start at the end and work your way back. So, Sylvia, let's imagine that you just finished your certificate training program and you call me. And what I'm going to ask you is, what do you want to do with your practice when you're finished with it, Sylvia? Are you going to sell it? Are you going to build a book of business and then harvest it? Or are you just going to send out an email that says, gosh, thanks for the memories, everybody, and you close the doors and take down your website and it's, over and done with? From that answer that you provide, we can reverse engineer all of the things necessary to build your practice. And then, so with that end in mind, are we going to build a website that markets and promotes an entity? Or are we going to build a website that markets and promotes you as an individual, right? So that makes a difference. Then we build after we've built a website, then we build a database. And a database needs to be comprised of those individuals that you already know, the individuals that you would like to know, and all of the associations and organizations to which those folks belong, because that's where we're going to do writing, speaking, training, networking, and put forward our social media marketing. So those are kind of the basic starting points. In the same way that 30 years ago, we had to have a trifold brochure on the front table in our lobby of our law firm, we now have to have a website. So that's where you start. And then from that place, we start building the strategy to move you forward.
So, Natalie, can you go into the first one a little bit deeper? So you basically listed out writing, speaking, training, networking, and social media, right? What about writing is so valuable in getting your name out there?
Well, if you're a good writer, then writing does a couple of things. One, it provides you an opportunity to tell a story in a narrative form. And stories are important, Mac, because they create an emotional bond with the reader. They also provide you an evergreen asset. And when you write an article, you can put it on your website as a blog. You can put it on your social media as an article. You could read it into a camera like this and create a video from it or a podcast from it. And so from the written article that you create, you can actually end up with several different assets. When you write an article in our industry, you're primarily writing something that is an opinion piece, right? This is a white paper. This is an opinion piece. And most publications in our industry want something between 1,200 and 2,000 words. So not huge. Sure, you can have footnotes, you can cite case law, but generally speaking, it's an opinion piece. So that's the benefit of writing. It's an evergreen asset that you can leverage and turn into other assets.
And when we already know what we can do with writing, what about speaking? To whom we should speak, where we should speak, and what we should speak?
So remember I said when you build a database, there's that third section that is comprised of the associations and organizations to which our primary, secondary, or even tertiary target markets belong. And when you're building that list, Natalia, you want to look at their periodicals, you want to look at their speakers bureau, you want to note all of those kinds of activities within that organization. And if they have a speakers bureau, or if they've got, a brown bag lunch series or something of that nature, or a podcast or a YouTube video, then you want to be putting yourself forward as the speaker. You need to be able to have a recorded example of you as the speaker to send to them so that you can prove up that you are good in front of a camera. And the real value in speaking to a live audience is something that every entrepreneur can appreciate. And that is that, let's imagine Sylvia goes to the Sam Houston Hotel, and in their ballroom are 100 individuals who all of them want to know about how to mediate bankruptcy or refinancing cases, right? And Sylvia gives a fantastic speech. At the end of the speech, everyone applauds because she's done a great job. And here's the really good part. Those individuals who have a case at that moment for Sylvia to hear as the mediator or the arbitrator, they approach her. They pre-qualify themselves as prospective clients. And so maybe 90 people step into the lobby and finish their networking event, and 10 people approach the podium and exchange business cards and set up meetings to get more information. As a business person now, Sylvia's only investing her time, her money, and her efforts and her communication with those 10 people who've pre-qualified themselves as prospective clients. And so as an entrepreneur, that's a much better use of our time and energy. Again, when we're speaking publicly, you put it on your website, you put it on your social media, the association has it on their website, you can turn it into a podcast, and you can turn it into a YouTube video. So again, you can leverage that one activity into numerous assets.
So Natalie, you said earlier that we should focus on writing, speaking, training, networking, social media, and you were just talking about speaking. How does speaking differ from training? What is the training component?
Training, a lot of people feel like, Natalie, you've lost your mind. Why in the world would I want to train at my competition? It seems really counterintuitive. But the kind of training that I'm talking about here is the training of either a source of referral. So if, for example, you have a marriage and family and divorce practice, or you've got a real estate practice, whatever your specialty is, you find those sources of referral. If you're dealing in family, a source of referral might be all of the local hairdressers in your town, right? It could be real estate agents, pediatricians, accountants, all different kinds of folks. And you want to train those people, in addition, of course, to all the lovely lawyers who are listening and watching, but you want to train those people about how we work, what we do, how we can help. You want to give them something that at the end of your training, they walk away and they've got something actionable, something that they can apply to their life or their case, and it makes things better or easier or more effective or more efficient for them. That's the kind of training that we provide. You could talk to them about the verbal judo that we use as neutrals. You could talk to them about the utilization of salesmanship skills that we use in our communication. You could talk to them about a wide variety of things, different choices, different options, how to move things through the process. But you want to provide those kinds of trainings to them, not because they're probably going to become your competition, but because when they are at that moment within their decision-making paradigm about whether or not to refer you work or hire you directly, you're going to be the person who is most prominent in their mind because you've established as the trainer that you are the credible authority on this particular subject matter.
Got it. And it's all about credibility and reputation building, right? That you have to become known for something. I think that too many mediators out there, or too many lawyers and mediators, generally speaking, just kind of have this approach of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks and hoping to be all things to all people. But you got to focus your attention. And I think that's what you're trying to do, right? When you give this roadmap from going from writing all the social media, you also have to have a focused theme overarching each and every step, right?
Mac, you're so right. It's if you live in a really small town, it will be easier for you to sort of be a generalist. But for most of us, I always recommend that you do one thing and you do it really well. And so, for example, Sylvia's background is in finance. And that's the kind of client that she's looking for, those attorneys who handle those kinds of cases. And when you're a business person, it's really, really important to focus your time and your effort on getting the most from your activities. And it's a lot easier for you to stay abreast of the trends, case law, conversations. All of those things are a lot easier to manage when you're just talking about one subject. It's easier for you to do the research. It's easier for you to join those organizations and associations and network. If you said, oh, I've got 15 specialties, I just can't imagine how you could possibly network within 15 or 20 different associations and organizations, write on different subject matter, speak on different subject matter, and give trainings on all of those different subject matters. You'd make yourself crazy. So as a business person, really focus. Just do one thing, do it really well, and do it in a way that your competition isn't or can't.
And speaking about competition, networking is one of the fields you want the mediators to work on. So, in terms of networking, what do you think a mediator should do? How to network with whom?
Networking, again, you want to focus on networking with your primary, secondary target market, or the sources of referral, the gatekeepers, so to speak. We as neutrals, we only get hired, Natalia, when people first know that we exist. Second, they like what they know about us. But most importantly, they hire us only when they trust us. And that only comes from us having had an authentic interaction with them. And networking is really, truly the best way to make that happen. And I know it feels, like you're at a singles club dating and you're setting yourself up for rejection. And it's really hard for those of us who are introverts. But there are hundreds, maybe thousands of books available to help you learn to network effectively and efficiently. If you don't find one you like, contact me and I'll walk you through it. I'll be your date, so to speak, at your networking event. And networking allows that sense of, even though it's not necessarily a deep sense of knowledge, it allows people to have a sense that they know you. And that leads to the trust necessary for them to hire us. So networking is important. If you're not great at networking, it's a skill. You can get good at it. If you're not great at speaking publicly, it's a skill. You can practice and you can get really good at it. The same with writing, the same with training, and the same with everything you do as a mediator. It's a skill that you fine tune over time.
So I want to circle back to a point you've made a couple of times, Natalie, which is when we're thinking about marketing or mediation or perhaps arbitration practice or a combined practice, we need to think of ourselves as a business person or an entrepreneur. And I'm interested in your thoughts on how that plays out in terms of that being a different mindset, and also how that ties into utilizing social media as a way to expand and build your brand and your practice.
So it's a really important differentiation to make. My most successful clients worldwide have one common denominator, and that is that they are first and foremost entrepreneurs and business people. They happen to provide mediation or arbitration services. And it's not a word game. I'm not trying to play with you. It's a difference in mindset. And entrepreneurs, business people, they read business marketing, they read books about strategy. They're listening to podcasts about business and marketing. They're watching YouTube videos. They're networking within these organizations and associations that promote the necessary creativity and strategic awareness that mediators and arbitrators need to have as business people. So for as many hours as you spend joining your local mediation group, which you definitely should do, join that group, stay abreast of what's happening in our industry. But you need to double that amount of time reading books about strategy, business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. And my most successful clients, if I said to them they can't be a mediator or an arbitrator any longer and they have to find something else, be a real estate broker or something else, they would be just as successful in that arena as they are in the ADR world because they're business people. So it's not a word game, it's a mindset.
Thank you. So yeah, let's spend, I guess, the rest of the time talking about social media because I think that is the big thing in the room. Everyone knows about social media, right? Everybody's on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter, but because social media as a phenomenon in our society is so new, I don't believe that most business people or entrepreneurs, especially mediators, know real well how to leverage the benefits that they can get out of it. And so, can you give, I guess it might be a two-part question. First, give a general overview of just the use of social media for marketing purposes in marketing your your mediation practice. But then also, let's give some specifics, like specific tips, specific ideas, strategies, stuff you've kind of come across in the last few years.
Sure. Mac, I understand. It's really hard when you have a day job as a mediator and you're trying to manage your practice as a business person and an entrepreneur to also learn all about the algorithms and the technology and how all of these things are interconnected, create posts and, make them engaging and gorgeous and do the research, all of those things. I get it. I spend hours and hours and hours every week doing that. So that most mediators and arbitrators can't do it or don't do it, completely understandable. But it isn't something that you should ignore. It is the difference between having a good practice and having possibly a great practice. And social media marketing now, in the same way that having a website is simply de rigueur, you have to have it, you also need to be on social media. But here's the answer to that first part of your question, Mac, and that is you don't have to be everywhere. So think about where your people are. Where do they exist? If you're dealing primarily with unrepresented clients, you might want to focus entirely on Facebook or TikTok or Instagram, right? That's where your people are. That's where the general public is. If you're dealing primarily with represented clients, corporations, entities, municipalities, etc., then you really want to focus all of your energies on LinkedIn. And for most of us, LinkedIn is where we want to live and exist all day, every day. Each platform kind of has its own preferences. They have their own algorithms. They communicate with each other differently. They communicate with their members differently. And so there is a learning curve. For some of us, steep and painful, but for some of us, it's just a lot of fun. And so for example, LinkedIn, where most of us want to spend our time, you want to be sure that you do a couple of things, Mac, none of them very difficult. You want to be sure that your avatar, that little round picture of you, of your gorgeous self, looks the way you look. So when you are in a mediation room and people walk in or they see you on a Zoom, they can say, oh, look, there's Mac. I've seen him before. That's exactly what he looks like on his social media. So this is not the place to put a picture of you and your dog playing at the beach. This is a picture of you at work, right? You also want to take advantage on every platform. That big piece of real estate behind your avatar, your banner. And I see far too many people just leave that blank, or it just goes to the default that LinkedIn and Facebook and all of the other platforms have. Take advantage of that. Put up there your brand, that's the personality of your practice, or your brand ID. Those are your colors and your logos. Put up your tagline, say who you are, what you do, how you do it, for whom. Use that real estate. That above the fold real estate is really, really expensive. And then things that people frequently get wrong are, for example, on their title, they'll just put, imagine, let's say, Sylvia Mayer, owner. That's great, but that doesn't help people find her. Owner of what? What does she do? How does she do it? For whom, etc. So it's more important for Sylvia to put there Sylvia Mayer, Esquire, mediator, arbitrator for bankruptcy, right? You want to be very specific because on LinkedIn and on Facebook, those are all searchable fields. So be specific with your language. This is also not the place to put guru or goddess or any of these grandiose kinds of terms. Big mistake. That does not lead to us having trust in you. I promise. I promise. Also, we want to avoid using symbols or emoticons. Those are not searchable. And so if you're going to use those or a text graphic replacement, right, so that you can have italics or bold or a fancy font, those are not searchable because they're images. So avoid those. Just go with what LinkedIn and Facebook and the other platforms provide you. Those are searchable fields. Take best advantage of them. And then in the section of every platform, Mac, there is that bit that you get to talk about yourself, the About Me section, right? And what creates connectivity is that you talk about yourself in first person, the same way that if Natalia and I are meeting at a conference, we would talk about our practices, we would talk about our businesses. I mean, how weird would it be if Natalia said, hi, nice to meet you, tell me about yourself. And I said, well, Natalie Armstrong-Motin owns a company that's based in Normandy. Oh, that's just bizarre, right? It's bizarre, but it also creates a barrier in the communication if you talk about yourself in third person. Now, if you're talking about your business, if you're talking about your practice, that definitely is a third person. But most of us have a personal profile page. Use first person. Create an opportunity for connectivity with the reader. And then you go down to, the other bits that we're most familiar with, the experience and the education parts. But here's the part that gets really good. And I think that what you're asking about is how to use social media. And each platform has a different preference. You want to be cognizant of that. On Twitter, you can post all day, every day, as much as you want. No harm, no foul. On Facebook, you can post 4 or 5 times per day. I don't recommend it, but you could. No harm, no foul. On LinkedIn, you want to post not more than 1 time per day. And anything you post on LinkedIn, you want it to be native content. That means that you want to upload the video directly to LinkedIn, not necessarily link away to YouTube, right? So they all have their preferences. You want to be cognizant of those. On all the platforms, you want to use hashtags, searchable terms, and connect with people in a real and authentic way. Invite people to connect, then send them a message. Thank you so much for having connected with me. I look forward to seeing your posts, right? It's a way to communicate and build those interpersonal relationships.
And it's so great to hear all that. I think that we only touched the surface, and I'm absolutely aware of that. But I also believe that this is how the need is being born. They need to know more, to search for more, to look up who Natalie Armstrong-Motin is, and into the mediation Mondays that Sylvia was also inviting us to. And I think that with that, we'll wrap up today. Thank you so much, Natalie and Sylvia, for being with us. And we're looking forward to having some more conversations of this type, because there is never enough to say about how marketing is important in our practice.
Yeah. And Sylvia, do you have any last minute wrap up words to say before I close us out?
I just want to say, Natalie, thank you so much for sharing your words of wisdom with us. I want to repeat what I said at the beginning. Natalie is an incredible resource on how to market your mediation practice. And I encourage everybody to utilize many of the free tools that she offers to help you build your practice. She's an invaluable resource. And thank you, Mac and Natalia, for having us on today. I always enjoy my opportunity to visit with you.
Yeah, absolutely. And Natalie, we're hoping to have you again, continue this conversation, because I think every one of those 5 parts can be a whole day's discussion, right? There's so much, that there is to offer. I mean, I even heard the tip that you gave of uploading content natively into LinkedIn versus linking away to YouTube, for example. I'm like, man, I've been doing it wrong this whole time. So yeah, definitely I've learned something, and I hope that others have too. Okay, guys, signing off. This is Mac Pierre-Louis.
Natalia Armstrong-Motin.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Thanks.